A simple, really important point that Lily Pereira made in her interview and we made here in Lesson 2 is that form and function are often one and the same in web design. Making smart aesthetic decisions is about communicating effectively. And so if you make smart choices in terms of aesthetics, it often means you've made smart functional choices for your audience viewing the website and doing justice to the content itself you put on your website. A good way to see this is to use the example of two different arts websites, starting with the Andy Warhol Foundation for the Visual Arts. And if we go through the aesthetic choices the designer made here, starting with the colors, you'll see that they all have a functional component. So this bright pink, bright blue, bright purple, bright green are of course colors that Andy Warhol himself used in his painting. And so that is a smart way to communicate the message, the content of the website itself. We have this nice pink highlight color, advancement of the visual arts, which of course is a good tagline for what this overall site is about. You also see that the hierarchy they chose, this very big revolving picture that's always Andy Warhol, that's an aesthetic choice in terms of how to make the hierarchy, but of course it also gets the point across that this is the Andy Warhol Foundation, and it does so quite quickly. Compare this arts website with the site of the Louvre, the famous French museum. And you can see the Louvre also has a hierarchy in which they've used a revolving slideshow to draw attention to some of what they consider most important. But everything else about this site is quite different. The fonts, for example, this serif font, the color palette is much more muted, and the tone is really quite different. It makes sense that the composition for the Louvre website is a little bit busier, considering that this is a museum representing many different artists in many different eras. It's serving an audience of potential visitors and curators and art enthusiasts, whereas the Warhol website is really talking about a single artist. One thing you can do to see this idea of how aesthetic choices set the tone for a website is to go look at the website of your favorite musician, and then pick a second website that's a musician that's a very different genre. And then look at those two websites side by side and think about how fonts, color choices, even things like hierarchy, how much negative space you use, these very simple aesthetic choices we've been making, think about how those play into the overall tone and feel and ultimate success in communicating the message of the website.